Hey everybody, what's good? Khalil Amani here. This is Khalil Amani's World 100. I got some gummy bears in my mouth. I'm trying to finish them. But I want to give you all my take on the debate last night. If you can call it that. We're going to talk about Judah Nazareth versus Israel doctrine in that debate. I was there from start to finish. I saw the whole thing. I tried to be biased. I try not to be biased. A win is a win. But I gotta tell you, Judah Nazareth took his belt off and beat the dog shit out of Israel doctrine. Kind of reminded me how my daddy used to whip me. I said Judah Nazareth gave me flashbacks of being 4 years old in Germany when my daddy whipped my ass and made me pee myself. That's the kind of ass whipping Judah Nazareth handed out to Israel doctrine. But let's talk about it, shall we? Let's talk about it. You see, Israel doctrine has been crying for a week or so, begging and clamoring for this debate to go down. Oh yes, he was. Started antagonizing Judah Nazareth, claimed he was scared because Judah Nazareth had, some personal shit going on in his life that he wanted to get off his chest, which made him postpone the debate. But finally, Judah Nazareth gave this fuck nigga Israel doctrine everything he asked for, and then some. We're going to talk about it, so stay with me. Let's turn the music off so we can really get into it. All right. I said Israel doctrine has been clamoring and groveling and begging for a debate with this brother Judah Nazareth over the priesthood. Is it the priesthood of Melchizedek? Or Melchizedek? Or Melchizedek? Or There's another way they say it. There's about 3 different ways to say it. But whatever way you want to say it. Melchizedek is another way to say it. I can't think of it right now. I can look it up. But anyway. We'll just go with Melchizedek or Melchizedek for now. This debate over the priesthood. Now, Israel doctrine has been begging for this debate. And again, Judah Nazareth has some things going on in his life he wanted to talk about and get off his chest, and he did. And because the debate didn't happen when Israel doctrine said it was supposed to happen, he started talking shit. He started disrespecting the man, just talking real reckless. And finally, he got his debate. And he got his ass tore up. Judah Nazareth 3-0'd his ass. 3-0'd, KO'd his ass. I mean, it was a weak debate all around. But it didn't take much for Judah Naz to spank that ass. Another loss for Israel Doctrine. I've never seen him win a debate. Now, Judah Naz claims that Israel Doctrine beat Chris Harris. Chris Harris. I don't agree with that either. Chris Harris mopped the floor with Israel Doctrine. But that's the deal with these debates. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. Sometimes there's never a clear winner because people choose sides and pick sides. I mean, look at the Trout Mount child abusing whore that sits on Israel Doctrine's channel. She's never going to admit that Israel Doctrine got his ass whipped, but she says she saw the debate. But notice in their conversation today, she doesn't say that Israel Doctrine lost, but she doesn't say that Israel Doctrine won. That's a clear indication that she thinks that Israel Doctrine lost. Because when your man wins, you say he won. But I didn't hear one time where the trout mouth chick that sits on Israel Doctrine's panel, the fake ass queen, gave Israel Doctrine high marks for his oratorical debating skills. No, she didn't. But I'm going to go through the debate and talk about some things and clear some things up and maybe talk about how I would have handled Israel Doctrine. But it was a clear win. It was a clear win for Judah Nazareth. But all this shit talking that Israel Doctrine did, and then on the night of the debate, he talks about his internet. I don't know. It's the weather, the internet. He doesn't even show his face. See, this is where I differ from Judah Nazareth and other YouTubers. If I'm going to debate a nigga, you're going to show your face like I'm going to show my face. No excuses. If you're having internet problems, then we cancel the debate and we wait till you get your internet problems together. But Israel Doctrine is so thirsty. He's so thirsty to debate that he goes up on Judah Nazareth's show half-assed, half-cocked, ill-prepared. His internet's not working. He's on his phone. Bullshit. He'd rather do this shit half-assed, just like that half-assed no documentary that we never saw. The same thing is true with this debate. Judah Nazareth was on camera. You saw his face. But Israel Doctrine wasn't. If I was Judah Nazareth, I would have said, no, I'll debate you when you get your internet shit together. Because I want to see you like you see me. And the audience should see you like they see me. That's already a bad deal. And I don't know how Judah Nazareth went for that off-camera bullshit. But I guess Judah Nazareth just wanted to get this shit over with. Just get it over with, because Israel Doctrine has been a thorn in his side for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I guess he said, fuck it. Okay, your internet's not working? Okay. You can't come on camera? Okay. You can't show your PowerPoint? Okay. But look how thirsty Israel Doctrine was last night. Internet half-ass working. PowerPoint can't get up. Won't show his face. But he still wanted to debate. Why do you want to debate when your shit is raggedy? Cancel the debate and wait till the internet and your PowerPoint and all cylinders are firing, and then let's get it in. But when you're a thirsty motherfucker like Israel Doctrine, you do a half-ass debate and then you get your ass towed up in the process. I don't know anybody I've seen thus far who said Israel Doctrine won that debate but himself. See, you can't declare yourself the winner because you're biased. Of course you think you won. It's about what the people say. And the people say Judah Nazareth won. Again, not even the trout mouth child abusing whore that sits on his channel thinks he really won that debate. But that's her nigga, and she got to ride with him. But Israel Doctrine, after begging for a debate, even though this man was dealing with personal problems, he finally got his wish. What does he do today? He justifies basically why he lost the debate. He doesn't say he lost the debate, but he's crying today. Oh, yeah, a bitch ass nigga, he made me wait for a week. Shit, I was over the debate. I never should have took the debate. I was tired. I've been waiting for a week. Now I want to have debate. See, you can't win with this fuck nigga. If Judah Nazareth just said, fuck it, I don't want to debate you, that would have been a different video. Oh, see, he's a bitch ass nigga. He's scared. He's running. He don't want to debate me. He said he would debate me. Now he's running. That's what Israel Doctrine would have said today. But he got his wish to debate. And now the narrative is, oh shit, I was tired. I was already over it. I was ready last week. I had my PowerPoint ready last week. I was ready to go. I shouldn't have debated him. That bitch ass nigga. I knew I shouldn't debate him. Shit, I've already fought my fight. The thrill is gone. I was ready last week. That's what he's saying today. Because he got his ass whooped. But that's what fuck niggas do. They justify getting their ass whooped. So he's crying like a bitch. Now let's get into the debate. Again, the debate was, is the priesthood going through Melchizedek, or was it going through Onias III? Now you know you are fucked up when in the opening round you only spend 2 minutes talking. That's what Israel Doctrine did, which means he had very limited information on this subject. You mean you can't talk for 5 minutes about the debate and your opening? This nigga was embarrassingly stupid to watch. And you know how embarrassed he was? I'll tell you. He was so embarrassed of his piss poor performance that the moderator, the white guy, he would tell Israel Doctrine, you know you got 10 minutes. And Israel Doctrine would bark. He would bark at the moderator. I know what it is. No, it's his turn. I said what I said. I'm done. Now let him go. That's what he said to the moderator. That's called I'm embarrassed. That's called the moderator shining the light on the fact that nigga, you got a whole 10 minutes left and you've only talked in your opening round for 3 minutes. In other words, Israel Doctrine shot his wad like a young 16-year-old, young man having sex for the first time. A young man who can't hold his nut. A 2-minute brother. Israel Doctrine performed like a young man who's just starting to have sex and he has no dick control. When you have no dick control, that pussy gets so wet and so good, so tight and juicy, that you blow your wad in 2 minutes. And in 2 or 3 minutes, Israel Doctrine had blown his whole wad. First round. His opening remarks. This nigga never completed a full, he never needed his full minutes. Was it 10 minutes or 15 minutes? Whatever it was. And each time he would end early, the moderator, Ryan, that's his name, would let him know, you got 8 minutes left, you got 10 minutes left, and Israel Doctrine would scream at the moderator that he was done. Don't be telling, basically what Israel Doctrine was saying was, don't be telling the audience that I ain't got shit else to say. That I've blown my wad in 3 minutes. I'm a 3-minute brother. That's all I got. From my opening round, my opening salvo of comments, my first round. The nigga never could. He never needed his full rounds. And what that says is, nigga, you didn't come prepared. You could talk about the weather and your internet and your PowerPoint. Well, fuck, nigga, you should have waited until that shit was up and running correctly. But since he didn't, out of thirst, you look very, very weak, my nigga. Anytime you have 15 minutes to make a case, and you don't even use half of that allotted time, it says you ain't got shit for shit. I'm not saying you got to use 15 minutes, but if you can't clear 10 minutes and say, okay, I'm good, I yield my time, then you are a piss poor debater. And what we saw with Israel Doctrine was a piss poor debater. In round one, if I was Israel Doctrine, I would have highlighted Melchizedek. I would have highlighted all of the times that Melchizedek is mentioned in the Bible. I would have built up this character, Melchizedek. Israel Doctrine gives us 3 scriptures, a Genesis, a Psalms, and a Hebrew scripture. Did you know that Melchizedek is mentioned 11 times in the Bible? But Israel Doctrine, he makes Melchizedek look so very unimportant. I would have taken my time in round one and laid out the case that Melchizedek is an important figure in the Bible and is the guardian of the priesthood. Israel Doctrine failed at that. I would have started from Genesis 14:18, where Melchizedek is introduced, and then I would have went to Psalms 110 verse 4, where David talks about Melchizedek, and then I would have went to Hebrews 5, chapter 5 verse 6, chapter 5 verse 10, and then I went to Hebrews chapter 6 verse 20, and then I went to Hebrews chapter 7 verses 1, verses 10, verses 11, 15, 17, and 21. I would have made a point of showing that Melchizedek is an important figure in the priesthood. Not Israel Doctrine. No. I said Melchizedek is mentioned 11 times in the Bible. He's mentioned 2 times in the Old Testament, Genesis 14 and 18, Psalms 110 and 4, and he's mentioned 9 times in the New Testament, all in the book of Hebrews. I would have made a point. My first round would have been me showing my audience that Melchizedek is important in Genesis, in Psalms, and in Hebrews. That from Genesis to damn near the end of the Bible, he comes up. But the listening audience who is not familiar with Melchizedek, we didn't know who he was. If you're not a Bible student, you don't know who Melchizedek is. And so that was Israel Doctrine's biggest mistake. His biggest mistake was just simply not giving us those 11 scriptures showing that people actually think highly of this man. He failed. He failed. He didn't use his first round. He used a few, 3-4 minutes, and he was done. When there was enough material in dealing with those 11 scriptures that talk about Melchizedek, that he could have laid out the case that this man is important and that the priesthood of Melchizedek goes on forever. He failed horribly and miserably of showing and bringing to life the mythical character known as Melchizedek. He failed at that. Now he said something that Judah Nazareth missed. He could have picked it up on it. He could have just embarrassed him. You gone?
Yeah, we're going to go to Home Depot.
Okay.
Okay.
He said something that Judah said something that, Israel Doctrine said something that Judah Nazareth could have embarrassed him. Just a little, this is a debate. It's all about when your opponent says something that's not right, you could have picked up on it and boom. Well, this fuck nigga Israel Doctrine, he says that Melchizedek was with the two angels when they visited Lot at Sodom. I said, Israel Doctrine misquoted the biblical narrative and said that Melchizedek went with the angels to Sodom. You want to hear it? Of course you do. Let's see. Let's go to the 101 mark. This is where Israel Doctrine continues to drop the ball. We'll go to the 101 mark. 101 and 101 and 40 mark. And we'll turn the volume up. Listen as 101. Okay. Listen as Israel Doctrine incorrectly gets the story wrong about Melchizedek. Melchizedek never went to Sodom with the angels. But listen to this.
Started. Did Melchizedek exist? Or was Moses lying to us when he said Melchizedek and two angels went down to Sodom and Gomorrah? I guess.
See? Is that true? Melchizedek and two angels went down to Sodom. Let's say that one more again. My goodness. Judah Nazareth, he missed that one.
Started. Did Melchizedek exist? Or was Moses lying to us when he said Melchizedek and two angels went down to Sodom and Gomorrah? I guess Moses will lie now.
Moses might be a liar, but you're a liar. So let me just show you the truth of that scripture, because Israel Doctrine told an outright lie. He told an outright lie. Melchizedek is introduced in Genesis chapter 14. See, Melchizedek blesses Abram, and the king of Sodom went out to meet him, meaning Abraham, after his return from the slaughter of the Chedorlaomer, however you say that, of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shidva, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. See? And so it is Abraham that meets with Melchizedek after the war. There was a king of Sodom. That wasn't Melchizedek. Melchizedek was the king of Salem, or peace. Right? Okay. And we go on down, and the king of Sodom, That's not Melchizedek. Melchizedek is the one. I'm looking for something. Hold on. I'm looking for where they introduce him as having no mother or father. Oh no, that's in the New Testament. That's right. So Melchizedek sits down after the war, after Abram comes back from war. It is Melchizedek who blesses Abram. And the king of Sodom went out and meet with him, with Abram, or Abraham, after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him at the valley of Shidva, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he gave him tithes of all. So Abraham gave tithes to Melchizedek. Okay? But now when we get down to the story, in Genesis chapter 19, where the angels go to visit Lot, and it says, and there came two angels to Sodom at even. It doesn't say Melchizedek and two angels went to Sodom at even, and Lot sat at the gate of Sodom. And Lot seeing them rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords were the two angels. My lords was not Melchizedek and two angels. Where do you see Melchizedek at? He's not here. Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house and tarry all night, blah, blah, blah. And the story goes on. And it tells you right here. And Lot called unto him and said unto him, and they called unto Lot and said unto him, Where are the men which came unto thee this last night? He's talking about the two angels. The two angels are referred to as men. It says that Lot was visited by two angels. Lot was never visited by Melchizedek and two angels. Okay. That's just a point that if Judah Natzarah was listening, he would have shitted on him when he said this. Was that 101:40?
Started. Did Melchizedek exist, or was Moses lying to us when he said Melchizedek and two angels went down to Sodom and Gomorrah.
So that was a lie. That was a lie. That was a lie. That was a lie. That was some Israel doctrine myth making. Melchizedek never went down to Sodom with the two angels. That's not written in the Bible. And that's a point that Israel doctrine failed on. And that's a point that Judah Naz, I know he was probably doing his notes and shit, but had he heard that in his rebuttal, he could have shitted on Israel doctrine just on that faux pas. That was what they call a faux pas. It means misstep. It was a blunder. It was a fucking blunder. Yeah. So that was one thing that Judah Natzarah, he let go by, and that was a lie that Israel doctrine would tell. He misrepresented the scriptures. He misspoke. He just didn't understand Melchizedek as much as he thought he did. How could Israel doctrine make such a blunder, such an error in retelling the story of Melchizedek? Melchizedek was simply a priest that when Abraham would win this war with these different nations, he would come and go with the king of Sodom. And Melchizedek, being a high priest, would say blessings and prayers, to which Abraham would give him a tenth of his spoils as a show of respect. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that Melchizedek went to Sodom with the two angels. Israel doctrine just fucked up. You know you done fucked up, right? You know you done fucked up, right? You know you done fucked up. All right, enough of that. I can't help it. I'm just giving you my reaction to what I heard. Melchizedek went down with the two angels to Sodom to talk to Lot? No, that never happened. All right, let's press forward. Let's press forward. Now, on Judah Nazareth's part, he made a little blunder too. But because Israel doctrine is such a doofus, because Israel doctrine is biblio-historically illiterate, he didn't catch it either. And many of the audience didn't catch it. Nobody caught it but me. And I respectfully corrected Judah Nazareth when he made a mistake too. There's something known as the Synoptic Gospels. What are the Synoptic Gospels? Well, let me let you hear Judah Nazareth incorrectly talk about the Synoptic Gospels, whereby you will hear me come, I write in the chat, and you will hear me correct him. I'm an equal opportunity critiquer. So, at about the 125 mark, 125 and 10 seconds, Judah Nazareth kind of puts his foot in his mouth too. But at least he's gracious enough to know correction and handle the correction. Okay. Talking about something called the Synoptic Gospels. What are they? This is what Judah Nazareth says.
Oh, okay. My bad. Okay. Khalil said, slight correction, Judah. No, Synoptic Gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Not.
Oh, that's my correction. I'm sorry, wrong spot. 123:15 is when he says this. Okay, all right. Listen to Judah Nazareth incorrectly tell us what the Synoptic Gospels are.
He said he doesn't base his belief on the four synoptic gospels. The four synoptic gospels are Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John are the four synoptic gospels. Israel doctrine.
So, here is Judah Nazareth incorrectly trying to tell us what the four synoptic gospels are. Well, we know what the four gospels are. The very fact that there's something called synoptic is an indication that the synoptic gospels are different from the four gospels. I don't know how Judah Nazareth missed this or didn't know this, but he didn't know it. And of course, Israel Doctrine didn't know it either. Because if Israel Doctrine knew what what the synoptic gospels were, he would have, in his rebuttal, he would have shitted on Judah Nazareth for that blunder. Again, most of us have heard of the four gospels. The four gospels. And now we have something called the synoptic gospels. The very word synoptic is an indication that the four gospels and the synoptic gospels differ. But Judah Naz, he makes a mistake here. And he mentions the synoptic gospels, but he says the synoptic gospels are basically the four gospels. He mentions Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That is not the synoptic gospels. The synoptic gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John, the fourth gospel, is not part of the synoptic gospels. And then so I would write, I'm paying attention, so I would gently correct Judah Naz in the comment section, and he reads it, and he takes the correction, and that's at the 125 mark. 125. He reads it, and now this is Judah Naz after I write in the comment section that he's incorrect with the four gospels being the synoptic gospels. And he reads it, and he kind of he shouts me out right here.
Oh, okay. My bad. Okay. Khalil said, slight correction, Judah. No, synoptic gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not John. Synoptic means agreeing. Okay, my correction. Thank you, my error. Thank you, Khalil Amani. He corrected me. Well,
okay, that was that. But Israel Doctrine didn't know that. That was a point of contention that Israel Doctrine could have got a brownie point in his rebuttal. Now, let me show my audience, because I know some of you all have never heard of the synoptic gospels. You've heard of the four gospels, but you've never heard of the synoptic gospels. So while I am doing this, I'm still teaching over here. So let me refer you to a book. Let me refer you to a book called Who Wrote the New Testament? By Burton L. Mack. He is a John Wesley professor of the New Testament. And let's just go read what he says about the synoptic gospels and why there's a difference between the four gospels and the synoptic gospels. And so on page, I say we're reading from Who Wrote the New Testament by Burton L. Mack. He's got a nice resume in the back. You want to know who he is? There he is right there. Burton L. Mack is a John Wesley professor of the New Testament at the School of Theology at Claremont and the author of The Lost Gospel, The Book of Q, and The Christian Origins and a Myth of Innocence, Mark and Christian Origins. So he's a professor, he's a PhD, he's a professor, he's a PhD. And so he writes in his book on 176 down here, scholars date the Gospel of John in the 90s and see it as evidence for a distinct Christian community that developed its own views of Jesus more or less independently. It has long been recognized that this gospel Gospel of John. We're talking about the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John. That this gospel differs from the other 3 New Testament Gospels, and that it must be studied separately. The other 3 are known as the Synoptic Gospels because they have they have so much material in common that they can properly be viewed together from synopsis. The Jesus setting and storyline of the 4th gospel, that is John, the 4th gospel of John, however, cannot be aligned with the synoptics. Got it? See? All told, John's story seems to be about the manifestation of a God, not about the historical Jesus or even the Jesus of the synoptics. Okay, I teach while I'm critiquing. And so, if Israel doctrine had been up on his A game when he heard the blunder from down under in Japan, if he had heard this little blunder where Judah Nazareth referred to all 4 gospels as the synoptics when the synoptics are the first 3, not all 4. I think I'll play that one more again. And that is 123:15. 123:15.
You can read about him in the Apocrypha. Oh, he said he doesn't base his belief on the 4 synoptic gospels. The 4 synoptic gospels are Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John.
So if the 4 synoptic gospels are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, then what are the difference between the synoptic gospels and the 4 gospels? I mean, that's really an easy whatever. So now you know Judah Nazareth, he made a mistake. He called the synoptic gospels all 4. But the reason that the synoptic gospels are different than the 4 gospels is what we just read. And that is Matthew, Mark, and Luke tend to agree for the most part. On the other hand, John is way out there in left field. Matthew, Mark, and Luke choose not to make God of Jesus. But John makes Jesus a God. And so scholars, biblical and religious scholars, have aptly named Matthew, Mark, and Luke synoptics. And the word synoptic means to agree. Agreeing. The synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they tend to agree on the fine points of each other's narratives. Whereas John is another book from another world, from another Jewish Christian community. I'm a little bit whatever that Judah Nazareth didn't know that. It's a little telling that he didn't know that. But that's something that Israel doctrine, had he been a real religio-biblical student of scriptures and the Bible, he could have snatched Judah Nazareth by the jugular vein in his rebuttal for saying, for lying and for misquoting and misspeaking about the synoptic gospels. The synoptic gospels are 3, not 4. The synoptic gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The 4 gospels are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And now you know there's a difference between the synoptic, the first 3 books of the Bible, New Testament, that scholars tend to agree that those three books agree with one another. Therefore, the word synoptic gospel comes into play. All right. Okay, we got that passed. These are things that when you know what you know, what you know. Yeah, well, Khalil, how come you don't debate? I don't need to debate. I ain't got no time. I don't waste my time, no effort bickering back with a motherfucker that's beneath my pay grade. But I will come on and straighten shit out. As with synoptic and as with Israel doctrine claiming that Melchizedek went to Sodom with the two angels. That never happened. Moving right along. Next point. Are you all loving this breakdown? Can you imagine if I was a debater? Can you imagine? If they would have caught me 20 years ago, I would have been fucking up the conscious community in debates. I'm just too old now. I just don't. It doesn't mean nothing. Debates mean nothing because when you win, when the debate is over, you got fuck niggas like Israel Doctrine that go to their channel and still say they won. You see why I won't debate him? He lost. By everyone's standards, Israel Doctrine got his ass whipped. And he's still over there saying, being disrespectful and claiming victory. Fuck him. And fuck debates. Now let's move on. Let's move on. Now, Israel Doctrine's premise that the Melchizedek priesthood is good. He relies heavily, not on the Old Testament, He gives us Melchizedek, Genesis 14. He gives us Melchizedek, Psalms 110 and 4. But he bases his argument on the New Testament. More specifically, he bases his argument on the book of Hebrews. Now, Judah Naz, he touched on it, but if I was Judah Naz, I would have taken Israel Doctrine to task on the book of Hebrews. Because that was the source of authority that Israel Doctrine tried to use. To claim that Melchizedek and his priesthood lives forever. I would have simply called into question the very book of Hebrews. That's what I would have done. Well, what do you mean, Khalil? What do you mean? I would have simply questioned the authenticity of the book of Hebrews. The book that Israel Doctrine is using to prove his Melchizedek case. I would have impugned the veracity of the source that Israel Doctrine was coming from. The book of Hebrews. Well, it is the consensus of scholarship. It is the consensus of biblical scholars and religious scholars that the book of Hebrews is an anonymous work, that it is not Paul's words, that we don't know who wrote it. I would have honed in. I would have destroyed the veracity of the book of Hebrews by which Israel Doctrine chose to base his Melchizedek story. Now, Judah Naz, he said, in passing, he said, whether Paul wrote it or he didn't write it, no, Judah Naz. You were too light on that. I would have definitely questioned. Well, who wrote this shit? Who the fuck wrote Hebrews? Now let's do this before we break into the Hebrews. Let's go read the basis of Israel Doctrine's argument in the book of Hebrews before we start tearing it up. It's important that we do this. Hebrews was Israel Doctrine's main source of authority for the Melchizedek priesthood. And so we go over to Hebrews. We go over to the book of Hebrews, starting with chapter 5, I believe. Chapter 5 and verse 6. This is the first time it's mentioned. It says, we're talking about chapter 5, verse 6. It says, as he saith also in another place, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Well, notice as it says, as he saith also in another place. In other words, this is a lifting or a plagiarism of a verse from Psalms. And I think if we look at this, that little R in verse 6 and go to the center column and go to verse 6, it'll tell you where you got it. Psalms 1, 10, and 4. Let me just show you that. See, the New Testament relies heavily on the Old Testament. The Old Testament never relies on the New Testament because there was no New Testament when the Old Testament was alive. So we go to Psalms. We go to Psalms, the 110th chapter, and there it is right there. And the Lord has sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So this scripture right here was taken, was filched, was pilfered, was stolen to put way over here in the New Testament, and we find it right here. Got it? Okay. And then we go, after that, verse down to 10. God, called of God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. These are the scriptures that Israel Doctrine didn't even read. And then we go over to here, chapter 7. For this Melchizedek, the king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all, first being the interpretation, the king of righteousness, and after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. Got it? And we go down. And we go down to verse 10. It talks a little bit more. For he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. See? If therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there that another priest should rise after the order of Melchizedek and not be called after the order of Aaron? And it goes on, and it goes on. Okay? And again in verse 17, for he testified, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. That is the verse that was lifted from the Psalms from David's writings in Psalms 110 verse 4. That's the theft, okay? Now, that is Israel Doctrine's mainstay, the book of Hebrews. That's his argument. Because it's in Hebrews that Melchizedek is a priest forever. And he remains a priest forever. Now, what I would have done, again, if I was debating Israel doctrine, I would have deconstructed his source. His source being the book of Hebrews. The first thing I would have asked rhetorically, I would have asked Israel doctrine rhetorically. A rhetorical question is when you don't expect and you don't want an answer from the person. You just want them to think about it for themselves. And then you're going to answer it. So I would have asked the rhetorical question to Israel doctrine. Who wrote the book of Hebrews? Since that's the source of your information, since you say Melchizedek remains a priest forever, since you think Melchizedek was a real live motherfucking person that never saw death, who wrote that shit? Did Paul write the book of Hebrews? I said, did Paul write the book of Hebrews? This is where Jeremiah Judah, he kind of skimmed over it and glossed over it. He kind of made mention of it in passing. Well, whether it was Paul or somebody else, Paul or one of his friends. No, Judah, that's poor scholarship. That's very poor scholarship. You got to go look what the consensus says, my brother. The consensus of biblical and religious scholars absolutely say that the book of Hebrews is an anonymous work. Anonymous means we don't know who the fuck wrote it. The consensus of scholars say that Paul was not the author of Hebrews. Let me just pull this out. Paul's books, the books that Paul wrote. I got it right here. It's in my book, because I wrote books. Let me see. And let me see. See if I can find it real quick in my book. New Testament. Let's see. I should have had that ready, but I just thought about it. Let me see. Christians. I just wanted to show you this. Maybe I'll have to come back to it because I hate to stop just to pull something out when I can. I'll look at it. Or I can do this. Well, okay, let's do this. Let's do this first of all. If I was Judah of Nazareth, I would have attacked the whole book of Hebrews. I would have attacked that shit with some fierceness. Yes, I would have. Let me show you what I would have done regarding the book of Hebrews. I would have simply went to a book like the same book, Who Wrote the New Testament by Burton L. Mack. And I would have gone to page 188. And I would have read this in my PowerPoint. The Epistle to the Hebrews. That's right. Let me read it to you. For the letter to the Hebrews, we have to imagine a scholar, not Paul, but a scholar, not Paul, ensconced in some private scriptorium, rummaging through his stacks of scrolls and papyrus notes, walking pensively in his garden, bent over his stand-up writing desk for hours, poring over fine points of the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, and trying out some ideals with the few other highly educated and sophisticated Christian intellectuals. One suspects that these conversations took place at table, lightly spread with fruits and nuts and small amphora of modest quality wine. He, this same scholar, not Paul, he, and we know he was male because of a masculine gender self-reference, may not have had as quick and sharp a mind as Paul's, or as personal and passionate an approach to public debate and theological argumentation, but he was far superior to Paul. We're talking about the person who wrote the book of Hebrews. He was far superior to Paul in learning, analytical capacity, and systematic thinking. He was capable of keeping in mind large quantities of conceptual detail and working with multiple themes as he wove concepts in and out of a vast Platonic world. That world based on Plato, Platonic world of ideals, and watched the cosmic picture change with each new stitch in what eventually amounted to an elaborate mental tapestry. He was also capable of elegant writing. His treatise leads the reader to ever more complex ideas, triggering unimaginable connotations, to end with a burning exhortation not to give up on the Christian faith. His intellectual labor was not the result of a momentary inspiration, and his treatise was not written in a weekend. The epistle to the Hebrews is the result of many months, perhaps years, of intense scholarly research and writing. Unfortunately, we do not know who this author was. Got it? We do not know who the author of Hebrews was. Got it? Unfortunately, we do not know who this author was. This is what I would have dealt with Israel doctrine while you quoting Melchizedek. Who the fuck wrote that in Hebrews? Who wrote Hebrews? We do not know who this author was, either by name, location, or association with a specific tradition of early Christian thought. Goddamn. Read on. From our point of view, the book of Hebrews just appears out of the blue, without title, destination, or signature, and its particular conception of the Christian faith does not fit anywhere on our map of early Christian writings. It must have been written sometime between the flowering of Pauline Christianity in the 60s and 70s and the writings of First Clement in 96 CE, because of an elaborate Christ myth is the starting point for the author's construction of his Christian cosmos. See? The author had a definite proposal to make, and he developed a lengthy and sustained argument to support it. Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, is not really a letter. It is what the Greeks call a protriptych, or philosophical exhortation, a treatise aimed at persuading its readers to accept a particular philosophical point of view. Goddamn. His treatise was saved from oblivion by some scribes. In other words, the book of Hebrews, it was saved from oblivion. That means it goes bye-bye. The book of Hebrews was saved from oblivion by some scribe in the school of Paul, who thought it worth adding to the collection of Pauline letters. It was a part of that collection that the treatise found its way into the apostolic writings that Athanasius recommended for early reading. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see if there's any more I want to say. I'm just giving you the Hebrews, the book of Hebrews. So Hebrews seems to be the result of an individual's, one person's intellectual labor, the exquisite proposal of a brilliant mind, but one that failed to make any difference. What a rare find, given the rules of what usually is saved and what is dumped in the historical processes of selective collective memory. Hebrews should not have survived. Goddamn. you see, this was Israel doctrine's main source of authority. Main source of authority. I would have murdered that point. Now let me find something real quick about the authentic books of the authentic writings of Paul. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I know you shouldn't do this, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to cite my own source. I'm going to cite Khalil Amani. Yes, I'm an author. I write about religion. Here's my books, and this is my research on what books did Paul write. And so we go over to Khalil Amani's book. It's called Ghetto Religiosity, 2000, Third Millennium Liberation. On page, the introduction, on the dropping sun, no, on page 11. On page 11. I write, all right, here it is right here. Scholars' consensus attributes to Paul 7 authentic writings. 1 Thessalonians, Philippians, hold on. Okay, let's start over. Scholars, I said biblical and religious scholars, their consensus, scholars' consensus attributes to Paul 7 authentic or real writings. 1 Thessalonians, Philippians, Galatians, Philemon, 1 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and Romans. And the book I got it from is from Introduction to the Bible or something like that. Got it? Got it? All those other books are what? Here it is right here. They're called, see, these what scholars, they call them Deutero or pseudo-Pauline writings, which means secondary or false writings. See? Their attribution to Paul is clearly fictional, for their language, style, and thought are thoroughly un-Pauline. Scholars consensus attributes to Paul 7 authentic writings: 1 Thessalonians, Philippians, Galatians, Philemon, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and Romans. Where the fuck is Hebrews? The fuck is Hebrews? And so Israel Doctrine, being a fake ass Bible teacher that he is, he relies heavily on an anonymous work. And if I was Judah Nazareth, I would have honed in on the book of Hebrews being a Deutero or secondary or a pseudo-Pauline work, a work of anonymous authorship, and I would have blown that shit out the water. And if I blow Hebrews out the water, it blows the idea of a Melchizedek bloodline or priesthood lasting forever. You see, the Old Testament never says that Melchizedek didn't have a mama and a daddy. The Old Testament never says that Melchizedek didn't have a beginning or an ending. That's all New Testament Christian myth making. You see, the point of the New Testament, reading all this extras that the New Testament puts on the character of Melchizedek, that he had no mama and no daddy, that he had no beginning of days nor end of days, that he never died. The Old Testament doesn't say that shit. The Old Testament just says he met Abraham after the slaughter of the kings, and Abraham gave him 1/10 of his spoils. And Melchizedek never went to Sodom with the angels to confront Lot. That's all Israel Doctrine bullshit lies. But the reason that this book of Hebrews fancies itself in myth making is because what they do, they take a character called Melchizedek from the Old Testament, where it never mentions his mom and daddy. Don't say nothing that he never died, no shit like that. But what they do with Melchizedek from the Old Testament to the New Testament is they try to make Melchizedek a Christ figure. And so today you have motherfuckers that think that Melchizedek was actually Jesus. That's what the myth, that's what the writer of Hebrews set out to do. He set out to make Melchizedek of Genesis the Jesus Melchizedek of Hebrews. The Melchizedek in Hebrews is Jesus. And this is why people like Israel Doctrine believe in this bloodline. Melchizedek. Now let me explain something else about the book of Hebrews. Something you didn't know. The book of Hebrews was one of those books that was hotly and highly contested for its canonization to be included in the New Testament. People like Martin Luther, you know Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr., the black man, the first Martin Luther, for which Martin Luther King Jr. got his name. Martin Luther, the Catholic monk that set in motion the Protestant Reformation. People like Martin Luther, a scholar, a Catholic monk, a professor in Germany, people like Martin Luther were vociferous, were adamant about placing the book of James and the book of Hebrews in the Bible. They were against it. They were against it. They were some of the biggest voices in opposition for the book of Hebrews to be included in the New Testament. Did you know that? Did you know that? Did you know that? We got a whole religious denomination, Lutheranism, after a man that did not want the book of James and the book of Hebrews to be in the New Testament. This is the man that gives you the whole Protestant denominations, whether you are a Methodist, an Episcopalian, an AME, African Methodist Episcopal, whether you are a Lutheran, whether you are a Southern Baptist, whether you are a Kojic, Church of God in Christ, whether you are a COG, Church of God, whether you are Holiness, whether you are Seventh-day Adventist, whether you are Jehovah's Witnesses, non-denominational, Presbyterian. This is the man that set those religious sects in motion. And this man did not want to see the book of Hebrews in the Bible. That's the kind of argument I would have done. Fuck Hebrews. Fuck your source of authority. It's bogus. And then, let me just give you a little bit of this off the internet, in case you think I'm lying. Go to the internet, little Google. Martin Luther considered the epistle to the Hebrews, along with James, Jude, and Revelations, as disputed books. He placed them separately in his New Testament translation, distinguishing them from the true and certain chief books. While he included them in his translation, Luther treated them with less authority, stating that they needed to be interpreted in light of the, Luther treated them with less authority, stating that they needed to be interpreted in light of the undisputed books. He was not convinced of their apostolic authorship and even suggested that Apollos might have been the author rather than Paul. Got it? See? Luther initially believed Paul wrote Hebrews, but later considered Apollos as a possibility. Luther did not consider the book of Hebrews to be fully canonical, placing it separately in his New Testament alongside James, Jude, and Revelations. Yeah. And there's a lot. You can read them. I mean, he talked a lot of shit about it. Oh, yeah. In essence, while Luther included the books of Hebrews in his translation, he did not give it the same weight or authority as the undisputed books of the New Testament. He treated it as separate category, requiring careful interpretation in light of the core text of the New Testament. So now we find out that Israel doctrine is relying on a source that the father of the Protestant movement woefully rejected. He only allows those books to stick around out of basically peer pressure. Peer pressure. And so if Luther had been debating Israel doctrine, that's what Luther would have been talking about. Who wrote the book of Hebrews that you quoting from? Really? Really? Now I thought that Judah Nazareth introducing the Codex Sinaiticus, that was good. That was a good point. And I thought it was relevant. I thought it was very relevant. And a great point that he would make, that when you look at the Codex Sinaiticus, which predates the KJV, the King James, about 1,500 years or so, when you look at the earliest writings of Jesus and his supposed death, we look at the Codex Sinaiticus, which predates the four Gospels, the earliest being the Gospel of Mark. But it is important. I know that Israel doctrine and that trout mouth child abusing whore that sits on this channel, they didn't get it. That shit went right over their head. That went right over there. Yeah, I didn't understand why he was talking about Jesus and resurrection. Because if you're going to talk about a priestly bloodline that lasts forever, then we have to talk about Jesus. And does he sit in heaven? And is he draped in a vestment of armor and a crown on his head? And is he part of the Melchizedek priesthood in heaven? Or is he not? And so I thought it was a pretty good point that Judah Natzareth would go in that area and talk about the Codex Sinaiticus and the fact that in the earliest writings of the New Testament, Jesus doesn't resurrect, die, and go to heaven. Jesus simply wakes up, comes out of a drunken stupor, shakes off the cobwebs of being brutally beat up, and goes to Galilee and meets the 12. And then some 1,500 years later, we get the King James Version, which tries to add on that he went to heaven. But the point was missed with Israel doctrine and that stupid bitch he sits over there with, that if we're talking priesthood and lineage, then that is a relevant factor as to whether Jesus actually ascended to the throne after the order of Melchizedek, or does Onias III, does the throne end with Onias III? Now I thought that Judas Nazareth could have done more with Onias III. He didn't need to, because he clearly was, stomping a mud hole in Israel doctrine's ass. But I would personally have liked to go some history on him and, a little background, a little bit more, dig a little bit deeper, but he didn't need to. And so at the end of the day, they both made some mistakes. Israel doctrine, he made a blunder with not going through those 11 scriptures that deal with Melchizedek and showing his power and his influence in Genesis, in Psalms, and then in Hebrews. He failed to show those 11 scriptures to give his audience a better feel on the importance of Melchizedek. He failed miserably and horribly. He lied and misspoke and didn't have his Bible stories in order because he says that Melchizedek went with the two angels to Sodom to visit Lot. That never happened. I already showed it to you. The only misstep really for Judah Nazareth is in the Synoptic Gospels, not understanding that the Synoptic Gospels were the first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and that John is not part of the Synoptic Gospels. He misspoke on that. And that was a point of contention that Israel Doctrine, had he known what I know, had he knew what the Bible, compilation, that would have been something he could have rebutted. He could have rebutted. So they both dropped. They both dropped the ball on that. Now, as I close, let me say this to Judah Nazareth. See, I never wanted to, as much as I talk about that woman that be over there on Israel Doctrine's channel, I call her a child-abusing, trout-mouth whore, because the fact of the matter is, Judah Nazareth, she has been investigated for child abuse, and she lost her child because of her own child abuse. That's a fact. I call her a whore because we have the information and the receipts that she was arrested 2 times for prostitution. Catch up, Judah Nazareth. I'm not here to make you hate that woman, but I think you're starting to get the picture, Judah Nazareth. I seen you, Judah Nazareth, in past times be respectful of that woman. But now, after the debate, you're starting to see what most of us already see and know. Now you're starting to see, Judah Nazareth, you was giving this woman all this. I'm talking about the woman that calls herself a queen. Oh, we call her a queen too, but we don't spell it Q-U-E-E-N. We spell it Q-U-E-A-N. Go look up that queen, Q-U-A-N. Now you can go over to my sister's channel, Leak You Interloper Nation. She got all the goods on her. Yes, she has been arrested twice for prostitution. Yes, her child was taken into protective care in the state of Alabama. Yes, her child was put up for adoption. Yes, she lost parental rights to her son. Yes, her child is now the son of another man and another woman. She's not a child advocate. That's just a front. And now you're starting to see, Judah Nazareth, I wasn't going to be the one to tell you, hey, you know she's a crazy bitch. You know she's a child abuser, right? You know she's got a whole jacket on her back for prostitution, right? No, now you see. Israel Doctrine was over there today telling you, Judah Nazareth, some nasty things to do to your children. And that woman sat there and allowed him to say it. She's guilty by association. She's afraid to step to that nigga and say, look, fuck nigga, don't be saying that shit while I'm on your channel. Why would Israel Doctrine talk about Judah Nazareth children after the debate? Nowhere was Judah Nazareth being disrespectful toward Israel Doctrine. He was having fun with the debate. Blah, 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 blah. That's all fun shit. That doesn't warrant a man to wake up the next day and talk about a man's children. And that woman that you've been calling queen, now, Judah Nazareth, maybe you are starting to see that bitch is as bad as him. No real woman, no real mother is going to sit on a channel where a man tells another man to do nasty things to his children. And so, to my audience, Judah Nazareth finally gets it. Thus Judah Nazareth would comment. Judah Nazareth would comment. He sees the chop mouth heifer. He's starting to see her. Judah Nazareth would comment. Judah Nazareth, wow, queen, your speech is defiled and low class as well? Yeah, she's all yours, Carl, laughing my ass off. He goes on to say, down here, it's the foul speech, woman, has nothing to do with your opinion. See? He's looking at this woman. How are you a queen and your mouth is gutter? Your mouth, your speech is defiled and low class. He would go on to say this. Pull this other one up. He would go on to say this. It's the foul speech, woman, has nothing to do with your opinion. And then down here he says, royalty demands self-control and restraint. You're talking like a common street woman, not a queen. It's your unladylike speech. Mm.